Spider-Man, one of, if not the most iconic character in all of comics. Yes, that includes DC. Routinely, Spider-Man is a character that outsells the likes of Batman, Superman, and oftentimes even Batman and Superman combined, whether that's comics, merchandise, or just an overall popularity based on whatever project he is in. Spider-Man is widely considered the most popular comic book character that we have. And honestly, rightfully so. Spider-Man is such a relatable character, and that's why the character of Spider-Man was created by Stan Lee. And because of this, we have gotten so many different iterations of the character of Spider-Man through the medium of animation, but also in live action. And while animation does tend to get scrutinized, it definitely doesn't get scrutinized to the level that live action projects do get. And the first iteration of Spider-Man that we did see in live action was Tobey Maguire. And he did do very, very well, and that trilogy is widely considered to be the best Spider-Man trilogy that we've ever gotten. So that being said, following that up with The Amazing Spider-Man and The Amazing Spider-Man 2, they definitely had a very tall task. And a lot of people consider The Amazing Spider-Man 2 to be the worst Spider-Man film that they have ever seen. And honestly, I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, but that is why today we are talking The Amazing Spider-Man 2, overrated or overhated. But before we get into anything, guys, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. Alright, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. So this movie is definitely very polarizing. When it first came out, it definitely was not that well received, unfortunately, and that is why we did not end up getting an Amazing Spider-Man 3. That, and also Andrew Garfield was inevitably let go from Sony, which a lot of people were unhappy with because they did want to see that story fully completed. And I definitely agree with that. I don't think The Amazing Spider-Man 1 and 2 were inherently bad. I just think there were certain issues, mainly due to studio interference. So that's why, first and foremost, I want to get into the good from Amazing Spider-Man 2. And honestly, there's a lot of good. This movie has so many iconic moments and so many great Spider-Man moments that we haven't gotten from other projects. And that's why I really do disagree with a lot of fans when they say this is definitively the worst Spider-Man film that we've ever gotten. So, first and foremost, the good from this movie, the chemistry between Andrew Garfield and Emma Stone was absolutely amazing. Their romance was next level. They had me wanting Peter Parker to end up with Gwen Stacy in virtually every project, whether it be in comics or animation or live action, just because of how good their dynamic was on screen and how well executed it was. And oftentimes it felt like Gwen Stacy fell in love with Peter Parker and then accepted Spider-Man. Versus if you look at other love interests for the character of Spider-Man and Peter Parker, it's oftentimes different. Like if you look at Felicia Hardy, she often falls for Spider-Man before she falls for Peter. Mary Jane, it's almost a toss-up. In some iterations, yes, she falls for Peter, but in other iterations, she falls for Spider-Man. And it's only when she finds out about both of them coming together and that both of them are the same person that she does end up with Peter in some way, shape, or form. Or at least confesses her love for him. So this movie does a really, really good job at showing the relationship between Gwen Stacy and Spider-Man. And that's definitely one of the high points about this film, is the continuation from Amazing Spider-Man 1. They did end up breaking up. We saw that happen, especially after the events of Amazing Spider-Man 1 with the passing of Captain Stacy. And that took a big toll not only on Gwen Stacy, but also on Peter Parker, especially because of the promise that Spider-Man had made to Captain Stacy about staying away from Gwen. That's something he wanted to honor, even though the film ended with him saying, "The best promises are the ones you can't keep." Again, I'll get into that line in a different video because I'm not a huge fan of it. But that being said, it did set up a lot for The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And it led to a really, really beautiful bunch of moments. Whether that was the elevator scene, or that whole interaction in Oscorp where he's helping her escape, or the broom closet, and where he says to her, "You picked the most cliche hiding spot." Just those little interactions were so amazing. And then you obviously get the end and you get that gut-wrenching gut-wrenching moment where Gwen Stacy does die. This film does something very courageous in killing off the main love interest, but not only that, making Spider-Man fail. He lost at the end. Yes, he defeated Electro. He defeated Green Goblin. But at the end of the day, the person he cared for most, the love of his life, he was unable to save. Simply because he made slight miscalculations and she ended up falling to her death. And seeing Peter have to go through that, and then especially as the end of the film progresses, we see that Spider-Man hasn't been around for a while. And he's listening to different newscasts, different radio broadcasts about the city missing Spider-Man and missing his presence. You get that great moment from Aunt May talking about that spider guy. Again, there are so many heartfelt moments in this movie that really drive home how great this movie was and how much greater it could have been if certain things were handled differently. That being said, the action in this movie was also really, really good. That Times Square scene with Electro, to this day, might be the best Spider-Man scene we have ever gotten as far as showing us his spider senses. Him stopping that car. Him stopping all those people from touching the electrified railings. We got to see him use all of his powers in one moment. And it really, really was a truly beautiful moment to see unfold on screen. This movie also showed us how powerful Spider-Man truly is. He was able to catch cop cars with ease, flip them right over. That is something from the character of Spider-Man we love to see, because it really does drive home to us, the audience, how much this character really does hold back most of the time. And again, that's something I love to see out of a superhero project. Now, obviously I am going to be slightly biased because Spider-Man is by far my favorite superhero of all time. He beats Nightwing, he beats Batman, he beats everyone. He is the best character in my opinion. I just feel like he is almost always written well, and he is so relatable to a day-to-day person, and that's why the character was designed the way he was. Stan Lee said it himself. That being said, some of the other things that I did enjoy, the action sequences at the end especially were also really good, whether that was the fight between Electro and Spider-Man, or even the fight between Spider-Man and Green Goblin. That whole moment of him trying to save Gwen while fighting Green Goblin had me on the edge of my seat. Even now, watching it back, and I've seen it probably 20 to 30 times, I'm still on the edge of my seat. I know how it ends, but it just gets your adrenaline pumping. It is that chaotic of a scene, and I don't mean chaotic in a bad way. I just mean there's so much going on that it really does grasp your attention fully, which is a really, really good thing. I do really like the Spider-Man suit in this movie. To me, it is a top 2 Spider-Man suit that we've ever gotten. Not to mention the amazing swinging scenes. I mean, that opening where it opens up, he's swinging along, he stops Alexi, and then he has to go and make it to his graduation. He forgets to take off his mask, and you just see Spider-Man there in a cap and gown. That is so Spider-Man to me. Again, being a huge Spider-Man nerd, that was awesome to see. Now, that does pretty much end it for as far as all of my praise for this movie and everything that I think this movie did really well, so I want to get into some of the bad. However, you'll notice I'm almost 10 minutes into this video, and I still haven't gotten into anything bad about this film. So that should let you know what I truly think about this film, but there are still some negatives, some pretty big negatives in my opinion, one of which is how they handle Electro. They try to make him seem as if he's a sympathetic villain, but then they kind of do a 180 and just make him 100% crazy. They make him snap over almost nothing, and they make some other characters really unlikable, like the guy who plays Ryan in The Office, BJ Novak. He is, I believe, Alistair Smythe in this project. He just really didn't fit in this movie. I feel like his role in this was somewhat forced, and that kind of brings me to some of the other negatives about this film being too shoehorned in. And this was definitely noticeable because they were trying to set up a Sinister Six project after this movie, and this movie definitely suffered from it. Instead of getting to flesh out things with Gwen and Peter, with Electro, or even with Green Goblin, because I don't think Green Goblin being forced into this movie was inherently bad. I think it could have been good if you had more time to flesh out those particular stories. However, However, when you're also trying to build up the Sinister Six, it definitely takes away from other elements of this movie. And considering we never got that movie, now looking back, it was definitely a bad decision because it teases something that never ends up happening anyway. So you end up ruining a project that could have been the best Spider-Man film we've ever gotten, and honestly made it one of the worst considered by many fans. But that being said, we do have a couple other storylines that I really just feel like were out of place in this movie, one of which is everything regarding his parents. I feel like that just deviated from the plot so much. I do know it's somewhat tied in with everything with Harry and Spider-Man's blood, but I don't think we needed to go through a whole montage of him trying to figure out what was in his dad's briefcase, trying to figure out all the clues, and then finding the train, finding all that information, the research that his dad did, and that his dad made it so only he could be Spider-Man. First and foremost, I'm not a huge fan of that either, because the purpose of Spider-Man is that anyone can be under that mask. However, in this universe, Peter Parker is literally the only one that can be under the mask, and his dad made sure of that. So again, that's just a little nitpick I have for the movie. It's not something that would make me dislike the movie altogether. However, because it did take away from the main points of this film, and it didn't give those points and those storylines an opportunity to shine like they should have, I definitely take it as a huge negative for this film. I feel like if they cut out everything with the parents and maybe just had a mention or two, spent 2 minutes on it, we could have used all that extra time to flesh out the story with Harry a little bit more, to flesh out Electro a little more, and to give a little bit more weight and depth to the relationship between Gwen and Peter. Because to this point, they've only been together through the first movie and then through barely this second movie. So adding more time for those two characters to build their bond and build their relationship further, I think would have been very beneficial for the overall perception from the audience for this movie. Now, some of the other things I really did not like is Harry Osborn being forced into this movie. Now, again, I know I did say that Green Goblin being in this movie wasn't inherently bad, but it's more so what I'm talking about when I say that is instead of having him in the first film, instead of establishing a relationship in the first film, we have to have that in this film now. I feel like if they had him in the first film and had him leave halfway through, it would have fit a lot more, but we had to shoehorn them building chemistry, them having that weird conversation in Oscorp and then down by the riverside, and then him just asking Peter for Spider-Man's blood. We had Spider-Man then having to go to him and talking to him about his blood. Again, if you had more time to flesh that out in this movie, and maybe even a little bit more teased in the first movie, I feel like it would have fit really, really well. Whereas now you have everything thrown into this movie, and it ends up feeling like a jumbled mess. And you definitely feel that when you watch it. There are certain scenes in this movie that are amazing, that are iconic, that you want to watch over and over again, but then there are also scenes that almost make you cringe, and almost make you feel as if that scene was forced in this movie, and that scene really does not fit into the overall story and message of this movie. So to me, I feel like the way they could have changed this is first and foremost, get rid of everything with the parents, have maybe 1 or 2 minutes dedicated to something with Spider-Man's blood. 2, I feel like you should have given more depth to the relationship between Peter and Harry, maybe have some callbacks to the first movie, especially given the fact that Uncle Ben passed away in the first film. I feel like that's something that they should have been able to relate with. Obviously, Norman passed away in this movie, so that should have been something that they were able to bond over a lot more than they did, but that is due to time constraints and so many things being forced into this movie. Another thing I personally would have changed is them trying to add depth to Electro, because either way it didn't work. I would not have given him much depth at all. He didn't need depth. Green Goblin should have been the character that you focused that relationship with, that emotional connection with for the character of Spider-Man, and have Electro just be a big bad. He doesn't really need a backstory. He doesn't need much to his character. He is just inherently a bad guy. Then when you have Spider-Man defeat Electro, have everything progress the same, and have the battle with Green Goblin, then I feel like it feels a lot less forced, and it feels like the story is happening a lot more organically. Again, these might seem like major changes, but it's realistically only taking out 2 to 3 plot points and replacing them with more depth for the other major plot points that we do have in this movie. Again, one of the other ones is Gwen going to Oxford. I don't know if that's inherently a good decision or a bad decision. I feel like if maybe we had a little bit more time to flesh that out and flesh out the decision she has to make to either stay in New York or go to Oxford, I feel like that would have added layers and added depth to this movie. But that being said, that is pretty much all I have as far as this specific movie. So if I had to rate this movie, if I had to say, is this movie overrated, or if I had to say overhated, to be totally honest, I would say this movie is 100% overhated. Although it has issues, although it is oversaturated with storylines, with characters, and it has so many things shoehorned in there from the studio, especially trying to build to that Sinister Six, like I mentioned earlier in this video, it does still give us some of the most iconic Spider-Man moments we've ever gotten in a Spider-Man project ever. That's across all animation, comics, movies, everything. This movie gives us one of, if not the best Spider-Man scenes, and to me, that's the death of Gwen Stacy, him failing. To me, some of the beauty about the character of Spider-Man is that he fails, and fails often. And not only that, but he often has to suffer through loss. And that's something a lot of people in the audience can relate to. That's why they love this character of Spider-Man. So I just feel like, given all of the amazing moments in this movie, the amount of hate this movie gets, especially when it first came out, definitely isn't justified. This movie did a lot of things really, really well. It gave us the best Spider-Man swinging scenes we've ever seen. It gave us arguably one of the best Spider-Man suits we've ever seen. It gave us definitively the best Spider-Man romance we've ever gotten. Their chemistry was unmatched, and it gave us, without a doubt, the saddest death we've ever seen in a Spider-Man film. And then having to watch him go through that was just gut-wrenching. So that's why, to me, this film is 100% overhated. To me, I would rate this film between a 7 and an 8. Overall, I would say this is a very good movie, and I would rate it above multiple other Spider-Man projects, including The Amazing Spider-Man 1. I personally prefer this movie over the first one with Andrew Garfield. But let me know what all of you think. Do you think the hate for The Amazing Spider-Man 2 is justified? Which storylines do you wish they cut to help with this movie? Or do you think this movie is perfect the way it is? Let me know in the comments down below. And while you guys are down there, please, for me, like this video, subscribe to the page, and hit that noti bell. And I'll see all of you in the next video. Goodbye.